going to show you how you can create an app on Lovable and deploy it to an OpenShift cluster. So imagine you want to create a hotel application, right? And what you can do is you can use a tool like Lovable that essentially generates code for you. The problem is that typically there's a lot of different people with ideas that are creating applications, and there's not really a standard when it comes to defining what a golden path might look like with these new emerging technologies. So what I did is I created a solution that essentially you have interns, co-ops, or even AI agents that are able to use prompt engineering to generate a source repository. In this case, maybe you have, in our example, we're asking the AI to create us a hotel application, but on the diagram, you can imagine a weather widget, right? And Lovable is fantastic at publishing this code onto your github.com, not onto your GitHub enterprise account. So the problem is that as we're developing source code, we need to essentially also publish it on the internal website. So here, as it generates the hotel application, we have a cron job that's running in our Dinero OpenShift cluster that's listening to every 30 minutes, and we can tweak this, of course, to detect any new source code that's coming in onto this GitHub organization. Right now, there's 2 applications that I used previously, and essentially, once we deploy this application, we will see the source code be published on this GitHub domain. Having said that, let me bring this up again, right, is that once you mirror the code, it's read only. You have a submodule link within that source code that points back to a different organization, which is the wrapper. And let me actually, in fact, show you that. This is our hotel application. So we're shifting gears real quick. We'll connect to GitHub, and we'll connect our project to our GitHub organization, which is this public one right here, right? If we refresh, we see that the repository got created. If we dive deeper, you can see that Lovable, the bot, generated all of the source code, which is fantastic. Now, if we go back to our diagram, essentially this first section is pretty much complete. Now we have a cron job that's listening to mirror essentially this code into our internal GitHub. As you can observe on the URL, it's githubibm.com, and we refresh our page, nothing shows up. Similarly, in our Content Studio Apps organization, which is this guy right here, right, has it's a wrapper around the Lovable application, which is the standard of integrating, for example, Docker images to be able to publish to your OpenShift cluster. If you're using SSO, right, or you're using, OAuth 2 proxy, which is a sidecar that sits on top of your pod, from my understanding. And we refresh here, the wrapper here doesn't show, but I can show you an example a little later on how that will look like. So let's go ahead and actually kick off the cron job, because we don't want to sit here. Right, so let's just go ahead and do that real quick. And I'll put up my code here, and I'll clear that real quick. And it's really easy. We'll delete the jobs, we'll create the job, and in fact, before I do that, I'll open my OpenShift cluster, which is Dinero, right? And you can see there's some things already running here. These are other apps that I used that I deployed to Dinero, right? Here's the YouTube app, and now we're going to deploy this hotel app, right? And let's just refresh. So the roomies to go, right? And we do that by essentially kicking off the cron job. So we'll just go ahead and do that, and you'll see something got initialized. The pod, oops, it's like every time I make this smaller, it doesn't like, hope I don't miss it, right? It's initializing the pod, right? If we refresh the repository, it should have created a new repo. Okay. And it's still going. We can actually go in here and see what's going on. So it's on step 7 out of 9. So it takes some time because it's doing a lot of things in the background. And this is the to-do list. So we actually don't want to look at that pod. We want to look at this one, right? So it's still thinking, okay? And this is the cron job, and it's doing a series of steps. And I believe it finally finished. There's a prepare script here as well. Oh, it's still going, step 6 out of 10. But it's doing a lot in the background. It's essentially, let's go back to the diagram while it does that. I can describe what's happening in the background. It's essentially creating it's essentially pushing an image to the internal image registry on OpenShift so that you can create containers, right? But it's doing a lot of series of steps, and I'll keep refreshing this because I want to show you once this gets mirrored, right? In fact, we can actually look for it. So here you can see we started mirroring from GitHub, right? Okay. And I think we might have finished that. Okay, it's still running. That's the Pocket. Okay. Still going. So this is the sync. Let's prepare the script. Step 4. So we'll just be patient. Step 5. It's pushing the image. You can see now it's getting the Rumi retrieval. We refresh that. Should have created the wrapper. There you go. Again, I apologize. This is just a mirror of what we have on GitHub. This is read only. What we really care about is if the contents that we define what a gold standard is wraps around that lovable repository. So if I refresh this different GitHub org, we'll see here the Rumi retrieval, and what you'll learn is that it auto-populate the infra and Helm charts that are required for you to essentially generate a container on your OpenShift cluster. So as this continues, we'll go back to the diagram where essentially pushing that image onto the registry, and will soon serve the route that's necessary to access the app. Okay, so I think this might have completed. We can see here the build is running now. Step 9. And we'll be patient here. It's tagging that image. It exposed the route. Now it completed. So if we go back to our pods, you'll see it's creating the container of the application. Now we can go to the network tab, go to routes, it created a route for you, and there you have it. Here is your Lovable app being deployed on Dinero automatically. And you might be wondering, Oscar, how come you just don't deploy it on Lovable instead? Well, there's a couple of reasons. Essentially, we're not just deploying Lovable apps onto OpenShift. We're essentially creating guardrails that are appended to the Lovable GitHub repository. And those gold standards, which are soon to come, includes, at the moment already includes the Helm to deploy the apps onto Dinero, but we also need to pass in or create the OAuth 2 proxy